Thank you. So first, let's start out with a round of applause for Karen and Hope, who've put this together. Right? And let's not forget that it's not the first time they've had a conference, and it's not the first time that Karen has done something for the animals, right? 1990 is when you founded UPC?
Yeah, 1990.
Yeah, think of that, working for chickens since 1990. It's an unlikely gig, but right? She stayed with it. Right, so it's amazing. It's just amazing. You know, anyone who's been an activist for very long, you just have to admire what Karen has done. It is astonishing. All right, so the intent of my talk is to think about and go over and ponder how to make strong arguments to reach very different people. As activists, what works, thinking about what works and what approaches to take. So I want to start out by saying you may hear me use the word animal. The reason I use animal is because if we talk about animals, we too often pretend that we're not animals. This is not a good thing. This is against what we are trying to do. So if we can use a word that specifically is not exclusive to other species, but instead, if an ape were to sign animal, they would be including humans, so anyone but apes. So whoever uses the term animal, it's any species except the person who's speaking. So for me as an author, it really makes it easier to write than saying non-human animals or other than human animals, these long, cumbersome terms. But most importantly, when we're talking to other people, we can start out by defining our terms, by talking clearly, by using words that mean what we want them to mean. And using animals as if we were not animals is not helpful. So this is one way to avoid that. I want to take us on a little journey to a meal with a friend who invites us out to eat. The arguments, the talks, the discussion should be familiar to many of you. All right, so away you go out to your meal, and your friend takes you to a burger joint because the place you wanted to eat wasn't open or whatever. Something happened. You ended up at the burger joint, and you're looking at a limp piece of salad and wondering what the heck you're going to eat. And you're immediately outed as a vegan. So if you weren't out, you are now. And so your friend says, "What on earth do you eat?" And you take this opportunity to say that since you've gone vegan, you've discovered food. You found out that there's spices other than salt. You found out that people in other places in the world are eating foods. Who knew? And you've even found out that now vegans have basically everything that anybody else is eating. So basically, you're eating everything plus more and better. So your friend then comes up with the question, why? Why would you do that? Why don't you just add all the vegan foods to the animal products? And even though we're living in a post-fact phase of our government, you say compassion. You come right out with a simple, straightforward answer. And she accepts it. Now, the reason she accepts your answer and the reason this is a good answer is because there's these things called virtues. So you may have heard of a guy named Aristotle, though you've probably not met him. But he was the one who started working with virtues, who started telling us there's these things that are good for us to have. These are behaviors that we all want. So it's been around a long time, and they're widely accepted. So when we talk about living simply, when we talk about being compassionate, when we talk about being loving, these are just ways of behaving that people accept because it's part of our culture, and frankly, it's part of every culture. So use the word compassion, love, caring, simplicity. All of these are kind of no-brainers. People will accept them, will not challenge you. If you look at a list of the virtues, you can see how many of these are important to us as activists. Right? If you kind of go through the list. And I kind of paired out some that I thought, yep, if you think about being an animal activist, there's no question that we need a lot of virtues. Justice, right? We care about what's going on. Courage. I live in Montana, right? I have to have a lot of courage to just go about and be myself. And the fact is, I'm not very courageous. I spend a lot of time eating at home. But presumably, we need a lot of courage. And think of Karen with chickens starting in 1990. That takes guts, right? So we have to be creative. We have to be curious. We have to collect information. So these are things that we need to know about in order to help the animals. So then your friend asks, well, what about humane options? Why can't I just, keep eating everything I'm eating, but try to buy a little different? And this is where information is important. So, right, she's thinking of buttercups and bedtime stories, and you're thinking of, the slaughter. They're all slaughtered the same. They're all transported the same. And frankly, if we treated human beings this way, none of us would even get to high school, right? They're killed so young. So there is no humane treatment of the animals that we eat. It's simply not possible. It's an oxymoron. It's a lie. So having information is really important. And we can tell the person that there's no government regulations, that so-called humane chicken probably grew up just about like every other chicken, only it costs you a little more to buy it. And then you say, anyway, even if we could raise them humanely, don't they have a right to life in as much as we do? And here you're drawing on something really important to remember, this idea of consistency. It's powerful. It's like the virtues. When you catch someone in inconsistency, they don't know what to do, right? They kind of withdraw, and they don't know what to say, because everyone recognizes, again, this is a philosophical principle. We have to be consistent. And people don't know that, but when you catch them in an inconsistency, you've got them. So watch for these inconsistencies, things like people being so interested in their own life while they're consuming other lives, right? That's a little problematic when you pause to think about it. Most people don't pause to think about it. Then your friend says, well, why about the dogs? Shouldn't they be voting? So your friend has gone from not caring about the cow that she's eating to being very concerned about the fact that dogs can't vote. Okay. So here you need to know about morally relevant distinctions. So there are differences that matter. A dog isn't part of our political system. A dog isn't interested in whether or not our cars have good emissions. I mean, physically in the end they're going to be, but this is our deal, not theirs. Children can't drive cars and children can't vote, and no one brings that up when you talk about the right to life. Then your friend is suddenly worried about the carrots, right? What about the carrots? They matter too, don't they? Right, so again, morally relevant distinction. So what's that morally relevant distinction between carrots and other animals? Sentience. Right? They don't have a central nervous system. And people will bring this up because they've never thought about it. But it's so easy to just say, look, the fact that you mow your lawn doesn't seem to worry you too much. Aren't you worried that grass is screaming? Right? No, they're not worried. They get it. They get that mowing your lawn is very different than mowing over a bunch of animals with a lawnmower, right? They get it. So it's a ridiculous argument. And if you point out that they're being inconsistent, if you point out that there's a morally relevant distinction, you're good to go. Point out that the fish has a central nervous system. The fish feels. That's why the fish gasps and flops and tries to get away from you. Leave the fish alone. Eat the carrot. Your friend is feeling a little concerned that perhaps you're bringing up the point that her meal is not the best choice. She's feeling a little embarrassed, right? When you bring up points like compassion, she recognizes that if your meal's compassionate, hers may not be. So she falls back on the great plea of humanity. Shouldn't people come first? All right, the dog can't vote, the carrot doesn't matter, but still, shouldn't we put our energy into human beings? You're thinking about factory farming and the circus and bullying and wars, and then you're remembering the loyal dog you've got and the cat that doesn't care about property, and you compare that to capitalism, consumerism. You're thinking, why, really? Why should humans come first? You don't say that, right? Right? You don't say that. You instead are well informed, and you say, yes, people are really, really important. And therefore, we need to change our diet. Because when we oppress when we oppress animals, we're oppressing people as well. First, you point out how our medical bills and our health is affected. People aren't dying from eating broccoli and tofu, right? Our leading killers are all from animal products. They're all from the beings that we're killing and consuming. And then you point out that while there's 900 million people who are hungry, we're feeding 635 million tons of grain to animals, factory farmed animals. That 70% of the grain that we harvest goes right into our factory farms and right down the gillets of animals who don't want to be exploited, who don't want to be fed that grain, who don't want to be slaughtered when they're in their adolescence. And that we lose 90% of the protein and the calories while people are hungry, right? So this is a powerful argument. People who are truly concerned about other people have to think about this. And when you're at a conference on religions, this is a really strong argument. The environmental argument is powerful, as well as the one of world hunger and oppressions in general. And so bringing up again, having the information and being able to say all the biggest and scariest environmental problems, all of them, the main cause, and you could look at her hamburger while you say it, is what we're eating. That we are consuming our earth. We are gobbling it up, right? Greenhouse gas emissions, probably the scariest thing happening on our planet. Number one contribution isn't planes, cars. Nope. It's the animal industries. Freshwater pollution, freshwater reduction, soil degradation, deforestation. All of these really, if you love the earth, if you love life, if you care about people, these are really serious problems, and they are smack up straight, directly coming from our choice of diet. And remember, it always matters, choice. If people don't have a choice, move on to someone who has a choice, right? We don't want to pick on people who can't choose what they're eating. People need to have a choice. So then your friend's a little desperate. She says, fish, the fish. Okay, they're sentient, but if I could save the earth, shouldn't I eat the fish? You point out that you may not see what's going on in those seas. They are in a state of silent collapse. And even the Pew Commission on Oceans has admitted this. The scientists are admitting it. We got about 30 years till the fishing industry is completely over. We've been changing which fish we fish out of the sea for years because we're running out of fish. And in any case, as pointed out, they're sentient. If you could choose between a carrot and a fish, and you're genuinely concerned about suffering or compassion or doing what's right, you're going to choose the carrot. So then you want to say to your human-loving person that you're talking to, we can only help people if we change what we're eating. It's the only way. So if you're sincere, rethink your diet. Now, there's one other thing. My slides are popping their words around a bit, but we don't mind. So I use the term amore. It's an acronym. Sorry, I always get the word wrong. And what I use it for is to remind myself of how to reach people where they are. So if I'm dealing with a person who only cares about people, using A, probably not my best choice, right? They don't care. They're going to say, pass that milkshake over here. I don't care that the dairy cows are, suffering because you're stealing their calves. And I don't care that the chickens are living in cramped cages. Hand over the egg, right? But you've got these other options. So this is where information is so important. You've got to be informed. You need to say to yourself, medical health. Now, this person looks like someone who truly, they're in their yoga outfit, and you can see they got their mat tucked under their arm. Health's probably a good place to go with them. Amore, what does it mean? So it's an acronym that's easy to remember. Then the one that we need the most information on is probably oppression. But all of these oppressions are linked, right? So the milking of the cows, the indifference to reproductive choices, right, carries over to feminism, right? The stealing of the young, which we would never tolerate in human mothers. The stealing of the reproductive powers and the exploitation of it. So, right, feminism plays in. You think of the workers that come across the border and don't have English language and get ended up in slaughterhouses where they get injured and they don't have insurance, right? So, again, if you care about people, if you care about the planet, you need to change their diet. And of course, religions is in here as under the R, and it's the one that is most sadly ignored in our movement. So I'm delighted to see a whole conference. It's, as you notice, 2 of my books are on this subject. This is an important subject. Talk about people who are called to care, right? Who have to care, who when you point out they're being cruel, they can't say, I don't care. I'm a Christian, I don't care, right? You can't, it doesn't work. It's embarrassing, they can't do it. So religion is a really strong and great place to meet people where they are. So remember when you're dealing with humans that you have to kind of talk about what matters to them. So you have to be well enough informed that with regard to a change of diet, you have an idea where to connect with them. So remember to define your terms, have that information under your belt, know about morally relevant distinctions, know about sentience, that the central nervous system is the difference. Remember the acronym AMORE, so you can talk about them in a way that's meaningful to them. Remember that you can catch them up in inconsistencies, and remember to be consistent yourself. But also remember to be humble. We all make mistakes. I know I do. So your friend is desperate and has nothing else to say, and she pops the question. But luckily, you are aware that this is a slow process, that you are not going to change the world tomorrow or even today, but we're going to be patient, and we're going to take people where they are, and we're going to come informed so that we have a chance of changing the world for animals. I'm ready for questions. Thank you. Yes, please.
What do you say when it's been proven and measured that vegetables and that plant life has feelings, has nervous reactions?
I do hear this, indeed. I say to them that there's certainly possible that there is something going on with plants that we do not understand, but I'm going to define my terms. And when we talk about feeling, it has to do with the central nervous system. So until we discover something else, we're talking without meaning. And I know that there is the studies that have been done. The most famous study with plant feeling could never be replicated, right? The person that did it, no one else could ever reproduce it. So until people come up with very clear information and some mechanism, right? And we may need a different word for it, right? Because sentience is about a central nervous system, about the nerves in your brain and how they work together, and we know the plants don't have that. I'm very open to the idea that there may be something similar, but right now, it seems a little silly to complain about the carrot when you're eating a chicken. Yes, please.
Two things. Actually, I heard a good response to that comment because I'm someone who cares about the feelings of the plants. And someone said to me, yes, and on a vegan diet, you're going to eat less plants than that.
Yes, it's also true.
The slide of the elephant.
Yes, if you care about the plants, quit eating the animals.
That are eating all the plants.
Mm-hmm.
So my question for you is, do you think there is an optimal method when you are conversing with someone one-on-one? Is it better if you know this person and you know you're going to have lunch or dinner with that person again, to just keep the little sound bites short and sweet and change the topic, or stay with them as long as they're willing to?
I love this question. Here's what I think is the most important thing when you get invited out to eat or end up getting sucked into a discussion of diet when you hadn't planned it, or when somebody invites you to it. My suggestion is be very clear at the outset, they invited the conversation. Because what will happen is you will get to the end and they will say, all you do is talk about diet, right? You'll be accused of being a proselytizer and insensitive and ruining the meal, and right? And all you wanted to do was enjoy a meal. So be very clear with them who brought up the subject and say to them, if you want me to answer your question, I'm happy to do so. Are you sure you want to talk about this? But then if they're into it, I wouldn't miss my opportunity. As long as they do.
You engage with them as long as they want to engage with you. You're there, and the longer the better.
Yeah.
But sometimes in vegan sales, I feel that I'm being pushy or just back off.
I think pausing, I think giving them a chance to change the subject, I think letting them lead the conversation. Once the question's on the table, take it and run. Then let them lead again. Let them see, if they want to suddenly talk about the movie they saw last night, that's what they're ready for. That would be my thought. Yes, please.
What do you say to the permaculture people who think it's so natural to work with,
Permaculture, yeah.
the animals?
Yeah, and I was just in touch with some guy I didn't know who got a hold of me about this permaculture stuff and just had no interest, because he was presumably an environmentalist, but he had no interest in changing his diet completely to plant-based because of the environmental effects. So for me, that ended the conversation. Like if you're doing this permaculture because you think it's great for the environment and you're not willing to have animal-free foods, then you're not sincere. And that's where the consistency comes in. And I nailed him on the inconsistency, and the conversation fizzled because he was not willing to give way at all. But I had pointed out he was being inconsistent and saying he cared about the environment and is continuing to eat animals. So that's my best suggestion with that. Again, use that inconsistency thing with them. Sincerity. Make sure they're sincere, and if they're not, nail them. Julie. Please. Julie.
Kind of a two-part question, I guess, about anger. How have you dealt with, I'm sure you've come across the angry reaction, and how have you dealt with that? Where do you think that kind of stems from?
Oh, that's a great question.
Could you repeat it so everybody?
Please. Okay, so what about when people get angry? Where does it come from? How do you deal with it? Do you guys like that British accent, or did you not hear it? Right? So anger and dealing with anger. I think that when we come from a truly compassionate place, we can get around a lot of that. And I remember back when I was younger and more of a flaming, right. I'm a little better now. It's been a long time since I made somebody angry in a conversation. And it's because I'm more easygoing, and I truly am come from a more compassionate place. I get how fallible and clueless we all are, staggering along through life, and that it's chance when somebody bumps into you and brings the change that will make your life better, the earth healthier, animals will have a better chance at life. So I think our approach is really, really important in preventing anger. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have any anger, because people can get pretty desperate. And I think one way we're going to get anger is if we're being unjust ourselves. And that's why I say, if you're dealing with somebody, for example, I think as a Caucasian, I need to not be approaching other people of different races that are in a racist culture. So people of color, better if I don't try to oppress them any further, right, in the way of saying, you need to do something different. Now, on the other hand, right, most of us in this room are going to say, and I remember when I said it at a conference, I'll go after anybody that's hurting animals. I will. But it's how you do it. So if you have a choice, be sensitive, be aware of your own privilege, be aware of your own oppression to people, be aware of other people, what they're suffering. I think all those things. If we could really approach people with that knowledge and understanding. And I know how I feel when a man brings up the rape issue, right? It just is like, how dare you, It's not an analogy that men should be using any more than I should be talking about slavery. And so that understanding really helps me to be sensitive to the fact that everybody comes from a different place, and if it's not your reality, stay out of it and be sensitive. But I think thinking about, if we create anger, my suggestion is step back, maybe apologize. Maybe say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. What are you thinking? And give them a chance to give you feedback. And I think you would gain so many points if we would do that. Back up and apologize, because you hit a nerve. And even if it's just the nerve of, I want to eat my hamburger, you still need to back up and give them a chance to express themselves. See where you can go with it. If you're going to move forward, I think you have to acknowledge the anger and the hurt, which is usually behind the anger, the fear, and deal with those sensitively. It's a great question, though, and we will all see it, right? We will all see it, especially if we're young activists. Yeah.
For those of us who are rude and late, and also are going to forget some of these things you told us, which book would you recommend that kind of covers today?
Oh, gosh. Which book covers today? None of them. All of them, maybe, is a better approach, right? This is the one that what this book does is it looks at how all the positive points. If you're within a religion, there is just no way that you can make an argument for continuing what we're doing. You just can't. So this book goes through each of the religions and points out all the points that make it completely impossible to carry on. And it's one of my backgrounds. I have a degree in comparative religion, so my master's is in that. My doctor's, it is in philosophy, so the two have worked really well. This one is voices from different people in religious traditions talking about the calls of compassion. And then I have a couple. I have one on bears and one on primates. So if you're interested in those animals specifically, this one will help look at oppressions. So talking about the different links between people of color, women, poor, classism, all of them. There's some ableism discussion in there. And these are the two on environment. So if you need that information, if you need to understand how you talk to someone who's an environmentalist, they are great allies, but they're not, right? We have to help them to be good allies. They are completely our allies. They just don't know that yet. But, right, we have to have the information, right, or they're not going to get it. We have to get it first. We have to reach out. And the one on top is the book on the philosophers, Reagan, Singer, and the arguments kind of behind it. So that's what the different books are about, whichever might interest you. And you will not find them cheaper. I make no profit on them, and I get them cheaper from the publisher. So if you want to get them from me, now's a good time. Yeah. Right. Yes, good. Bingo. Right. Okay, so how do we deal with media specifically and the fact that this restaurant. So I live in Montana, right? So this is, right? This is just my life. It's just no one, when I moved there, none of my students knew what vegan was. Now, it's rare to find a student who doesn't know what vegan is. And I have 120 students every semester. I've been there for 15 years. That affects that community. So our advocacy matters. It absolutely matters. And there's things you can do. Like I know somebody who made little cards that said, "Thank you for serving vegan food," and would leave them in the restaurant so that they know they had a vegan in there. I know when I go out to eat, and there's different ways, right? There's a soft approach that if they're willing to accommodate you and take out several things and charge you the same amount, right? People are happy with that. I'm not happy with that, right? If you don't have vegan food on your menu, I'm not going to eat there. That's all there is to it. You either serve vegans or you don't. And I will make a point, even if I wasn't. Sometimes when I'm not hungry, I'll go in and say, "So what you got that's vegan," right? It's my way of making them aware there's vegans in the community, right? They say, "We haven't got anything." "Oh, okay, thank you. I'll go look somewhere else," right? And I wasn't going to eat anyway, but the point is I went in there and made it clear to them that having a vegan dish would be a really good thing. So there's things that we can do, being proactive, being out there, knowing ourselves. What do we want to do if they don't have anything? Am I willing to let them know? If they're cooking my vegan burger on the same grill they cooked the last burger, is that okay with me, right? So, and talking to them about it. Like they say, "Well, we do have a vegan option. Okay, are you going to cook it in the same spot?" Right? And they're like, "Who cares about that? What kind of a nut is this?" But right, you can point out to them that, if this was a matter of health, right, that maybe I'm going to have a reaction because you got some of that lactose in my cup, right? So making them aware that this is as important as any other eating issue on the table. They just don't know about it. But you do, and that's your deal. And if they're going to feed you, they need to be aware of it. So leave some cards, ask for what you want, talk to them. Do not rush the process. When you've got them there and you're asking about their food, don't miss a chance to say a few extra things, right? That's our advocacy, right? This is why I eat vegan. Do you have anything that's animal-free, that's suffering, that I can feel like I'm not causing as much suffering, right? Something that's environmentally more sound, right? Don't miss your chances, please.
There is a movement that's been going on for a number of years now to help the veterans returning with PTSD to the local farm and work with the farm animals. So part of the question is there a movement now to create a group that might be veterans that are vegan?
Right,
and
right.
if you change them into vegans, how does that possibly take the hostility or the fight out of them if they get called up again?
Right. The violence, seeing the world differently. That is that's a really important question that you bring up for several reasons. And the main one I want to come back to is being sensitive to others and where they're at, right? Don't be insensitive to a bunch of veterans that are working in a place of cruelty. They're not your best target, right? It's a minority. They are suffering. They're a mess. My sister works with vets. She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And, don't add to other people's oppression. If you deal with vets, listen to them. Talk to them in a way that is sensitive to their point of view. Make sure you hear them. So that's a really good question. And one of the things we can do as advocates, we need to be asking our wonderful sanctuaries if they're reaching out. If they're reaching out to our vets in the community and inviting them, if we have the same kind of why wouldn't we have the same kind of programs, right?
Well, because I think there's a lead in there with what's been going on with the pipeline and so forth.
Oh, God.
Maybe that's our connecting back with that.
Yes,
Native
yes,
Americans.
yes.
So that might be a lead in that we can
Sure would.
transition.
It's a great thought. It's a great thought. Very good. Okay, boy, please, how much time have we got left for questions? Where are we? Awesome, please.
Mine's quick. I just wanted your opinion on a pledge people are taking, which I have not been willing to take because my parents are aging and I don't want to miss any opportunity I get to be around them. And that's people doing they would never sit at the table.
Oh, yes.
either. And
Yeah.
so they're cutting out, they might go to a family function, but after the meal is eaten. So they take a pledge, I just will never.
Kim, that's a great
not
question.
vegan.
It's a great question.
And, I'm asking all of it.
Right.
Like, I feel bad that I just don't want to cut certain people out. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the power and maybe the trauma of that.
Yes. And again, you're quite right. This is a very divided issue. My take is come from a place of compassion, whatever you do, right? So for you, what does that mean? I lost my father about 2 months ago. Still painful for me. So we have to come from a place of love. But I will say that my father said to me, and my sister, he said, I wouldn't have lived so long if you two hadn't changed my diet, right? He would have died. He lived to 86. And right up until he was 85, he was walking and taking the dog out. And he had a great life. And one of the reasons was because my sister and I went vegan so young. We've been vegan so long, and we'd always, we would come home, and and they were great. Their mom's everything she cooked for us when we were kids, that had to hurt her. But we were too young to know it, right? So we just say, we don't eat that anymore, right? We were just clueless and insensitive, and I look back on that and I'm horrified, right? So just try to be sensitive to your mother has fed you since you were a child, and these foods that you love, that mattered to her. So being compassionate requires such a big picture. It requires so much, just not being in your own little world. And it's much harder when you're young, right? You don't always have that perspective. So also, just knowing that's just how it is. And mothers get that. Their kids are clueless and insensitive and passionate about things. And so the world goes around, right? So all I can suggest is whatever you choose, go from a place of compassion. Please.
So I think that I'm really miss trying to do this with, from a place of compassion. I've been a vegan for 35 years and
Awesome.
also have taught in college, and my students know what vegan is and so forth, and do a lot of animal rights work. But what I'm having trouble with is how horrible I feel when I have all the knowledge that I have. The pain that
Yeah.
every single day. And I
Yes.
just don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And I will sit down and have a meal with someone who's eating meat, but I try not to.
Yeah.
Like I'll,
Yeah.
if I go to visit a vegan, and I said, when we go out to eat, and the restaurant has tofu and has meat, could you
Yeah.
have the tofu? And he said, no
Right.
problem.
Right.
So sometimes
Awesome.
I talk about that.
That's cool.
it'll be
Yeah.
great, but I would have eaten with him anyway. But I just don't know what to do with all the pain I've got.
Yes. Exercise is one thing. And for me, I don't eat with people. I say, let's go for a walk. Somebody will say, let's go for tea. I say, no, let's go for a walk. And I know that walking it's a time when I process, and I make a point of getting out. And I'm lucky, I'm blessed with doggies that look after me. So my doggies take me out for walks, and there's love, and they're, just that presence, and I know it's healing. 35 years, it's about how long I have been a vegan. And yeah, you carry a lot of pain. And living in Montana, I'm close to the pain, right? I see the cattle. I watch their babies. They're being born now. I'll watch them grow up. I'll watch them go away. I'll see them go away in those trucks. And I just think for me, what I do is what are the things that bring happiness? Doggies, walking, the trees, go out and sit in the yard, friends, right? So knowing what you need to do to look after yourself and making sure you do it, watching for things like anger. When you start to get angry, you need to back up. You need to say, do I need to take a break? How do I heal this? And we as activists, we need to look after ourselves. This is an exhausting, sad, and I know I don't watch sad videos ever, and I haven't for years. If you're vegan, don't watch things that are sad. Don't look at the chicken when you're looking at the beautiful magazine that Karen puts together. Know which parts are for you and which parts are for other readers, right? Protect yourself. It's also a good question. Please.
Yeah, I really appreciate your thoughts on this, and I appreciated your mnemonic. In Los Angeles, cosmopolitan area, a lot of cultural diversity, and with culture comes a lot of eating practices. I'm just wondering, on a larger level, the comment about the veterans, I think we forget just how much people have created a life for themselves that is centered around their diet of eating meat. And so how do we bring, I appreciate when you said specifically that we need to pay attention to what their world is.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do we grapple with the fact that in addition to the 5 that you mentioned, that there's something about their suffering or their...
That's part of the oppressions. That's under the O,
So not
that
just
cultural
outside
difference.
oppression, but not the oppression of workers at the factory farm, but you're talking about...
Racism, ableism, classism, sexism, all of those. That those are out there and they're linked, and they're things we need to be aware of and sensitive to. We have to know who we are. As a female, I'm definitely, I'm not at the height of privilege. As a Caucasian, I certainly am. And knowing that, and the world's a huge place. Why would we target a minority community, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's far more people that look like me, but then again, I come from Billings, right? Pretty much everybody looks like me, right? So you live in a very different world than I do. And I guess my take on that would be if I had a friend, if I knew someone, or if someone approached me. But I would never approach somebody from a community that I feel somebody who looks like me has oppressed. Why would I when I have so many that look like me that are busy chowing down on chickens and pigs and cows, right? That's just not where I would go. I would leave that to people inside the community in as much as I can. When they come to me, fine. If they're my friends and ask me, fine. Does that answer?
Yeah, it's a struggle I work in a union building. Probably, 1% of the people are vegan or close to vegan.
Right, yeah.
And, I want to figure out,
At least you can say the building, right? I live in a state where, right? Worried about your building. Right, but I hear you. Yeah, talk to your friends. That's where you start, I think. Please.
Some people talk about using hillsides for grazing cattle for food, with the idea that there's not going to be agriculture there, they're not going to plant carrot fields there on those hillsides, so that if you're concerned about efficient use of land,
Right.
that you would raise cattle there.
Right. Nonsense.
Say again.
Nonsense. Right? So we feed 70% of our grains to cattle, right? And you can say the argument of grazing, but when they're grazing, methane, right? The grass-fed cow is far worse for climate change. Far worse. Incrementally worse. So you have that to think about. And what would be wrong with just leaving that land alone? Wouldn't we like a frog to live there? Just as an example, right? So the question is, why do we have to use every bit of land? Just because we can't plant carrots there doesn't mean it isn't important in its own right. What we do know is by eating animal-free, we protect our environment. And so if you're worried about how to use the environment, it's not ours. We're sharing this planet. And if you can leave a piece of land alone by choosing a different diet, wouldn't that be the best option? I guess that's what I would say to them. Please.
What effect would you say choosing to be a vegan has had on your lifestyle, or eating habits, or the way you socialize with people?
Yeah, the way I don't socialize with people. Yeah, it's made a huge difference. But I will say that, right, oftentimes, especially if you come to being a vegan early, there's something a little different about you anyway, right? And I didn't fit in well anyway, so I was always the quiet, kind of strange child. So I don't know whether it gave me, I'll tell you the main thing for me from that answer. It gives my life purpose. It has, when I see people, they have to have kids because they don't know what else to do, right? If I don't have kids, what am I going to do, right? I'm not too worried about that. I have got a lot of work to do. And I recognize that people are having children because they don't know what else to do. And it's an endless regress. And the kids have to figure out how they're going to find meaning. Okay, let's have kids, right? And this is the planet's struggle. This is our struggle. So for me, being a vegan has given me a life that is beyond myself, because I'm going to be dead soon, right? I don't matter that much. But if I can make the world a little better, then it makes me feel like maybe I wasn't so bad being here, right? I didn't just wreck things. I tried to do something good. But yeah, there's definitely also, the pain that was brought up. There's a lot of things about it. My dad always said, Lisa, can't you be a little more normal? And one of my friends, I started fasting about 20 years ago. I got sick of Thanksgiving, so I'd start fasting on Wednesday, and I'd fast through the day of slaughter, and I'd fast through the day of feasting. One of my friends just pointed out, Lisa, can you do anything else to exclude yourself from the world, the community? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Maybe I can. It has an effect. But a lot of it's good. I would say the majority is good. I wouldn't change it. Who had a hand up? Anybody else that hasn't asked a question? Yes, please. Yeah, please, yes.
So you start your talk with the word compassion, and I've been vegan for 10 years. Yesterday was my anniversary.
Congratulations.
And I'm from Mexico City, so I almost never use value-based arguments when I talk about veganism, because at least coming from a cultural context where caring about animals is as far removed from your experience as it could possibly be, I think, it is very hard to convince people because there's this undeniable thing called moral relativity.
Right.
So, in communities that already have vast difference with my political leanings in terms of human rights, it is even harder to make a moral argument about animal rights. So I usually try to go with fact-based, almost self-serving arguments, be it your health and the health of your children, or the health of,
Did you perchance come in a bit late?
Did I?
Did you by chance come in a little late?
No, I didn't.
But you saw that I covered that, right?
Well, I did, but my question to you is why, for people with whom we do not even share enough language and background understanding to make a compassionate or value-based argument, why would that even be a big part of our repertoire when we're trying to reach not only the weirdos, the people with one foot out the door, who already are listening to our message, but those people that are at the margins and even harder to catch. So I'm really confused as to why value-based arguments seem to be at the foundation of our opening statements, and we're not looking at the fact-based, the numbers, like the hard data that are undeniable.
I think they're all depends on the person. This is where you reach people where they're at, right? The environmentalist isn't interested at all in compassion, right? So that's why with environmentalists, you need the information on the environment and how our diets affect the environment. When you have, you have to meet people where they're at, and compassion is absolutely. I think from where we come from, I think it should be the core. I think it should be our core, but that doesn't mean it's the core of what we present to others. You meet people where they're at. If you're dealing with a scientist, forget the compassion. Go with whatever else. You've got Amora, you've got the suffering, the medical, the oppression, the religions, and the environment. And if you're dealing with a religious person, go straight to religion, right? That's a no-brainer. Karen.
Well, I agree we have to meet people where they are, where they're at. But we also want to extend where they are further.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
idea of just sticking and staying in a static way with people where they're at, I don't think
Right.
I mean, by definition, that doesn't advance
Correct.
their consciousness,
Absolutely.
their awareness,
Yes.
and certainly our job as animal advocates.
Yes.
And whatever group we're talking about, we would never say, well, this is where they are at in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So we're going to explain why Jim Crow or
Right.
African American slavery is bad for the environment or
Right.
hurts the economy, but
Right.
we're not gonna talk about the morality of
Yes.
it, because
Yes.
that's not where they're at.
Yes.
Now, clearly, that argument is self-defeating.
Yes.
For all
When we
concerned.
talk about where people are at, it doesn't mean we're going to leave them there. It means we're going to figure out where to start with them to pull them out of their hole into a new space. Wait, because you've asked a question, I think, yes, please. You can always catch me after.
What are your thoughts on the following inconsistency that we all have to grapple with?
Uh-huh.
Which is that I was thinking my own inconsistencies, and I wanted to move my money to a bank or credit union that did not
Yeah.
give loans to
Mhm.
or invest in enterprises that torment animals.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot find one.
Right.
And it seems like the animal activist community as a
Wow, wouldn't that be cool?
There is the New Resource
Cool.
Bank, which humane banking and gives to
Right.
dairies and stuff
Yes,
that are
yes,
humane.
yes.
But, and does meatless Mondays. Well, who of the professionals have approached the ones who are claiming
That's a great idea.
Global Alliance for Banking on
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
exists, but
Mhm.
they all support animal agriculture.
Yeah,
What can we do? Isn't that the root cause that we should
it is.
act about?
It is. Most of us are not much money people, right? And so that hasn't happened, but that's a great, you know,
I talked to Ingrid Newkirk, Paul McCartney's their poster child, and I said, he's a vegan, feed a Paul and money.
yeah,
What if the Bank of Paul McCartney does no harm to animals?
yeah, yeah.
Somehow it seems like we should, as a group, be
I like it.
serious.
I like it. Good idea. Take the lead. Yeah, make it happen. Okay.
Telling leader, I'm not.
If you, if
I would love us all to
anyone,
brainstorm about
anyone who has anything more, please, I'm available. Catch me at my table. Catch me wherever you see me. I'm happy to talk to you about anything else. Thank you.